All right, everybody, welcome back to Philosophy for the People, second installment on panpsychism. This time, a case against panpsychism. Last time we covered some of the philosophical background and motivations for panpsychism. Jim has written quite a lengthy but excellent series on panpsychism over ahead of his Substack. So this conversation will supplement what he has written over there. We will include links to that right below. And Professor, always good to chat with you. Looking forward to this one.
Yeah, good to see you, Pat. I especially appreciate you making the time and effort given your family's new arrival, right? Which is joyous, but always not without its taxing elements, right?
Yeah,
So
that's right. That's right.
congratulations.
I told Jim beforehand he's going to be carrying this entire conversation because Dad is tired. Great news, of course, is that wife finally delivered Briga. She was really pushing it past her due date. Did the home birth. Mom delivered like a champ, but as always, sleep dwindles, becomes a little bit more limited in these situations. So yeah. So we're working through that, but can't really complain because everything just went really well. So
Good, man.
plus,
Good.
I'm not the one who has to make the case against panpsychism. It's Jim's job.
Exactly.
So
Exactly.
I just have to sit here and kind of like look at the screen.
Yeah, I have gotten myself into this, right?
Indeed, you have. So go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead. No,
I'm done.
So,
You go.
so as I always want to, kind of preface these conversations, I'm going to be critical of panpsychism, but ultimately I'm kind of a fellow traveler with it. Okay. And that'll come in this series that I'm doing. It's going to probably come either in a part of this series or just as another thing I'll start up when I try to give kind of more of a positive account of what I think is going on. But so here in this second installment of the Panpsychism, the Problems of Modernity series, I'm giving what I think is sort of a knockdown, drag out metaphysical argument against panpsychism. Okay. I think there's sort of broadly, kind of cultural, quasi-religious stuff that I'm going to get into the third part.
Excellent.
But this part, I'm kind of going to do some sort of logic chopping metaphysics stuff. Okay.
Beautiful.
And as people are well aware, I'm not alone in that. Like the world doesn't necessarily need another one of those. There's plenty of good metaphysical objections to panpsychism out there. See Ed Feser's recent, exchange with Goff. I think that's excellent. There's, if you go to the Substack, I cite some of the stuff, of people critical of panpsychism.
Right. I read a passage from Hart last time, and he's got a fair amount of stuff on it as well. That's critical.
And what I'm doing here is actually in very much in kind of a similar vein as with what's Hart's up to here. So, I recommend to the listener to check out Hart's stuff. It's probably going to it's going to be in symbiosis with what I'm doing here.
Nice.
Moreover, I call this a Hegelian critique of panpsychism, and that maybe overstates it because it's just I need the Hegelian piece to support one part of a key premise in the argument. Okay, so I kind of use though the Substack as a chance just to sort of teach some Hegel, which I think would is useful. Okay, so
Indeed.
Probably more Hegel than I need for this thing, but I got going and said, what
you got excited. It's often
I went down the dialectical rabbit hole and what the hell that's what Substack's for, right? Okay, so
right, yeah. It's a great platform. I love Substack. I've been rocking on mine for a while now, so it's really good to see you join the ranks of us Substack.
Yeah, I'm digging it. So and people please subscribe to the Substack, share it. It's free. It's just we would all like to see our ideas get out there and get in the mix and get critical feedback and stuff like that. So please,
and to be clear, while many people charge for Substack subscriptions, neither of us do. Ours are totally free. So if you like this stuff, then you can go join our list there. So cool. All right, Jim, start us off then. Where are we beginning? This case?
So let's go ahead. Do you mind to pull the argument up?
Yeah, let me see if I can do a little screen share here. Sure. And sorry for the choppiness and the video connections today, if that's the case for the gentle listeners. I don't know what's going on, and I don't care to fix it. So we'll just do what we can. All right, here it is.
I can only assume the security state has a.
There can be no doubt. All right, so here it is. It should be on the screen now. So Jim, why don't you just read us through the steps of the argument, and then we can break them down. Yeah.
So let me just read through the argument, and then I'll go back and look at all the steps. Okay. So premise one, panpsychism, if and only if dualism and intelligibility. I'll explain what I mean by those shorthands in a minute. Two, if panpsychism, then bundle or sublation. Three, if bundle, then not panpsychism. Four, if sublation, then not panpsychism. Therefore, in five, we find out right from the foregoing in one that panpsychism has to be false. And then going even further than I need to for this argument, kind of what I'm setting up for later. Therefore, it's not true that both dualism and intelligibility. We're going to have to give up one of those two. Okay. All right. So that's the big picture of the argument. That's the structure. And you'll find this laid out in the Substack, for you to follow along and have a look at. Okay. So let's go to that first premise. So I want to be careful here when I say panpsychism, if and only if dualism and intelligibility. I don't mean that that's a truth of logic. Okay. I don't even mean it's necessarily metaphysically true. I'm capturing the sort of dialectical situation that gets us into panpsychism in the first place. Okay.
Right.
So if you go back to the first Substack, what I argued there is that, look, modernity, we can at least in philosophy of mind, we can see it really is defined by this conjunction of what Taylor and Dreyfus call the dualist sorting, that the mental and the physical are absolutely different. They are contradictories. Like something isn't mental if it's physical, something's physical if it's not mental. And this commitment to the absolute scientific intelligibility of the world. Okay, so we expect science can explain everything. There's kind of a soft scientism in the background here. And we have this coupling of dualism with this sort of dualist ontology, where we can basically break all the world into two, very, very broad ontological categories: dualism, or pardon me, the physical and the non-physical. And those categories are supposed to operate too autonomously from each other to some degree. Okay.
Right.
Though the preference for intelligibility would be that we do get a scientific explanation for everything. So ultimately what we're looking for here in the modernist view is an explanation of the mental in terms of the physical, even though they're supposed to be autonomous and sui generis. Okay.
Yeah.
And as you can see, I'm setting up, that's really a problem. Like that's just the statement of that is problematic. Okay. Now, and then, I looked at, there's all these attempts to try to deal with that: materialism, illusionism, interactive dualism, simple emergence, all this. Yeah. But sort of the last man standing is panpsychism, which is basically this idea that, well, what you have at the most basic physical level is in fact a breakdown of the dualist sorting, that you do have something that has mental properties and physical properties, not full-blown mental properties. They're conscious-ish, as I put it, right? But then if you get them integrated properly, you get full-blown mentality out of that.
Right.
Okay, at the top level. Okay. So panpsychism is seen as a solution to this tension. Now, the point of premise one is to say, look, if you're a panpsychist, you probably are a panpsychist because you accept dualism and intelligibility, right? So I can say, if panpsychism, then dualism, intelligibility, as a matter of just like the way the history of this is played out. Okay.
Right. And by that, you just mean this dualist sorting and intelligibility in terms of at least a soft scientism. Is that just to clarify?
Sort of a soft scientism.
Yeah. Got it.
Okay.
Cool.
And that's basically like what Goff really produces well in his book. I'm into panpsychism because I accept the dualist sorting, not the way he puts it. And I expect there to be a scientific explanation for everything.
Yeah.
Okay. Or at least a metaphysical one that's scientific friendly. It's got to be a kind of a naturalistic metaphysical one. Okay.
Sure.
Okay. So, and then also I'm making the case that the only way you can maintain the dualism and intelligibility is if you go for panpsychism. Okay. So that's why I get the if and only if here. It's a two-way conditional, right? But it's sort of it's a weak, kind of conditional that's built out of the rhetorical situation.
Yes, that makes sense. Yeah,
I just don't want someone to freak out because this is not a truth of logic, and I'm
right. Don't worry. Somebody will. Don't worry.
Somebody will. Yeah. Okay. But let it be said. Let it be written that I said this. Okay. All right. Yeah. Okay. So two things that we got to get into here. So first of all, I didn't emphasize properly in the first part of the series that for the panpsychist, the only way this is going to work is if, let's say our preferred fundamental property or particle is the electron. Okay. Take your pick. We'll go electron. All right. the panpsychist has to say the consciousness-ish of the electron is an essential property in the same way that the negative charge,
the charge or
is
the
an
spin
essential
is,
property.
right? Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. They have to both be essential in the same sense, because if they're not essential properties, then it makes sense to ask, well, why is the electron conscious? Okay.
Right.
And in which case you've lost intelligibility there. You're going to have to like push the explanation down to another level, and you're going to have to give another like sub-emergent account here. And we've already done that, right? And so the whole point of panpsychism is to say that we get to something that is conscious-ish, no questions asked. Why? Because that is constitutive of the being of the thing.
Right. It has to be an autonomous fact, not just a
It has to be an autonomous fact. Yeah. Right. And I like that. And also it's got to be nothing deeper, but it's got to be somehow explanatorily satisfactory. In the same way, we don't feel unsatisfied when we say, well, look, man, the electron is negatively charged because that's what it is, bro.
Right.
And it's like, you don't ask, why is Fido a dog?
Why are bears mammals? Right.
Why are bears mammals? Right. You can ask, why are there mammals? You can ask, why are there bears? But you don't ask, why is that bear a mammal? Because that's what it is. If it failed to be a mammal, it would be, incorporated into some other being. Okay. So that's going to be important to this argument is to remember that the consciousness-ish has to be an essential property on par with, say, the charge of the electron. Okay. All right, now the sublation piece. Okay, so sublation is a term of art from Hegel. Okay. I mean, the word Alphabegen is a common German phrase, but Hegel really kind of twists it to his own use. Okay?
Right.
And so the idea here is, for Hegel thinks all significant concepts begin in a non-temporal sense, meaning like our most natural analysis of the concept begins negatively. Okay. But he says that you can't just have a negative analysis of a concept, because it has to not just say what it's not, but it has to say what it is. Okay. So for Hegel, all conceptual analysis, even all understanding, begins with a negative moment, he calls it. Okay. But then it has to then be synthesized into something affirmative. Okay. So all first order contrasts for Hegel, in as much as they're cognitively significant, have to be resolved into a higher order synthesis. Okay. And this is really the Hegelian dialectic, the famous thesis, antithesis, synthesis, which he never really said, but that's okay. Okay. Right. And so like his most famous example of this is easiest to understand is he says, look, take the notion of something being here. Okay. Well, really, when you first initially kind of like move into thinking about what it means for something to be here, it's really defined negatively by just simply not being somewhere else. It's not, for all theirs, it's not there. Okay. It's just not anywhere else. It's to be here is to not be there. Okay. Fair enough. But then if you think of it, what does there mean? It simply means not here. Okay. So you have, for Hegel, here and there, and he thinks this is true of all of our concepts, are initially interdefined negatively. Like the most immediate way of approaching a concept is in a contrast with what it's not, with a paired negative of it. Okay. This is why like Hegel says things that are extravagant, like all being is always entails nothing, which he means to be here entails there, which is not being here. Okay. Not meaning that that it's internally contradictory, but it just always suggests this as a matter of logic.
Yep.
Okay. All right. So, and I think that's actually kind of hard to disagree with. Okay. And so the next move for Hegel is to say, yeah, but it's when we say the concept is always, defined by its negative, by its negation, if that's all we ever get is just to be here is not to be there, and just to be there is not to be here, then we really never say anything. It's like completely empty. There's no content, right?
It's like saying that to be a man is to not be a woman, and to be a woman is to not be a man.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah, not to be a man. Yeah. And so this might be important actually. But so Hegel says, look, it can't just be pure negation. It has to be what he calls a determinate negation. And like this notion of determinate negation runs everything for Hegel. Okay. And so to say that something is, here and therefore it's not there, okay, it doesn't just tell us what it's not, it tells us something about what it is. Okay. That there's, in the negation, there's an affirmation too. Okay. That you couldn't meaningfully contrast here and there unless there was something implicit behind the contrast that was affirmative.
Sure.
Okay. All right. Now, he also means, though, too, that this affirmative element in the contrast, right, has to be something that's shared between the two things that are being contrasted. Okay. So what he does is, look, here and there can interdefine each other meaningfully so that we can make a significant statement with them, because they are both ultimately, if you analyze them, simply expressions of place. Okay. So, and that's the synthesis. So what he's saying is, like, here and there, we know what we're talking about with it. These concepts are cognitively significant and therefore ontologically significant in his view, only because there's something else, a third player in this, that is what they both are.
Yes.
Place.
Right.
Okay. It is what they both are. Place. Okay.
Great introduction to Hegel we're getting here.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you. Yeah.
We could this can just be part of our Hegel series at this point. Yeah.
It might kick it off. Yeah. Basically, I wrote this Substack as a way of tricking people into learning some Hegel.
No, this is really good. It's like, wow. Yeah. So awesome. Yeah. Please continue.
I know it's not as scary and spooky as you think it is.
It's not. No, I mean, Hegel, the first time you try to engage Hegel by himself, he is. But if you just, honestly, if you get some good commentators, it's not that bad. It's not that bad. And I don't want to get off on sidetracked here, but I feel like sometimes there's a little too much emphasis among like philosophers of like just read the primary texts. And some, like, obviously you want to do that, right? Yeah. But there's just some philosophers that I would probably never have understood if I didn't have some secondary help, right? Yeah. So
if there weren't for Bob Brandom, I would not understand Hegel.
Yeah. So just wanted to slide that in there.
And if it weren't for my teacher Kwanse Lee, I wouldn't understand Bob Brandom. So here we are. Okay.
Right, there you go.
So anyway, and so okay, and really, so far, all Hegel's done is reproduced one of the primary arguments of Plato's Phaedo, and an argument that's all over all of Aristotle's logical writings, which is to say, you can't have species unless there's a genus that they both contrast with, right? But they're also both similar to that they're brought within. Okay,
unity behind difference, right?
Yeah, unity behind difference. Now, here's where Hegel's different: is he is the most like. You never get any free lunch ontologically philosopher that's ever lived. Okay. And so for Hegel, that unity behind the difference cannot do ontological work unless it's on par ontologically with the things that it unifies. Okay. So if you're going to say this particular concrete here, right, meaningfully contrasts with that particular concrete there, okay, as substantive occurrences, okay, then place, right, the synthesis of the two likewise has to be a particular concrete thing. It's universal, but it's concrete, the way Hegel puts it. Okay. So for him, place is not just a logical description, right? It's not just a higher level of analysis. It's a thing. Okay. And it's the thing that grounds these other two things. Okay. So for Hegel, place is just as much a concrete substantive thing as here or there, right? Dog is just as much a concrete substantive thing as Fido and Rover. Yeah, okay. And his point is, he thinks anyone who tries to weasel out of that is like trying to have ontological free lunch. They're trying to get logic without paying the ontological consequence of it.
Sure.
Right. Okay. So then, so for Hegel, then, that's what sublation is. It's what appears to be two negatively defined, like a surface level dualism. Once we really understand something, is actually an identity at a higher level of ontological reality or analysis. Do you see that? So really, in the end, the apparent contrast between here and there gets put together, synthesized as really not being a contrast at all at the level of place, and place is a real thing. Okay. All right. And so for Hegel, I mean, he goes all the way with this. Like he thinks that this is all our concepts. So there can be no dualism for Hegel, if it makes any sense, if there's intelligibility in the world. So for Hegel, you got to choose between intelligibility or dualism.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Where there's dualism that you cannot sublate into a higher level ontology that unites the two terms, then things don't make sense anymore.
It's just absurd, right?
It's absurd. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So for Hegel, the dualist sorting was a botch to begin with. Right?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
It was a moment we had to like discover ourselves and compare ourselves to nature negatively, but that's not understanding. Understanding will be when we finally can see that in fact these are not contrasting things.
Yes.
Okay. Mm-hmm. All right. So help yourself to not go all the way with Hegel and on this. I mean, because he's going to sublate the whole thing. Okay. But I do think he's right about this, is like dangling dualisms, right, do not sit with intelligibility. And the only way to overcome it, I think, is something like Hegelian sublation.
Mm-hmm.
Now, be that as it may, you don't have to agree with me on that for the argument. What I want to argue here is that the panpsychist is going to have to do this at some point.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. There's something special with the panpsychist that's going to set them up on this. Okay. So after all that, let's go back to the argument. Right. If that's okay.
No, that was awesome. Yeah.
Awesome. Okay. You still have the screen share up?
I do. Yeah. If you want me to take it, it's been up the whole time. If you want me to take it down, it's
no, because I'm going to refer to it now.
Yeah. People will have just burned into their mind. They won't be able to they won't be able to look away. They won't be able to look away for this argument for 10 years. Just be right there.
Yeah. Okay. So I love it. I hope not. Okay. So premise 2, if panpsychism, then bundle theory or sublation. Okay. Mm-hmm. So what I'm saying here is, look, you're a panpsychist. All right. So you've got essential properties of negative charge in the electron. You got the essential property of consciousness-ish. Okay. Mm-hmm. How do those essential properties relate to the electron itself? Okay. Are you going to say that electrons are just a la David Hume, just bundles of properties? Okay. So that there's no concrete thing that underlies the charge and the consciousness that has them both, that the ground floor just is properties? Mm-hmm. Or are you going to say, no, there's something that underlies them? Okay. And the argument I'm making in the paper is to say, well, wait, if you have something concrete that underlies the properties here, okay, we have to note that nothing can have contradictory essential properties, mm-hmm. right? So then the only thing you can do is to pull off a Hegelian sublation of the mental and the physical at that level. Mm-hmm. You see that? Mm-hmm. So either the panpsychist goes bundle theory and say, oh, no.
And they lose intelligibility.
Yeah. Right? As you see here, what's going to happen, they're going to lose intelligibility.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Or they go sublation and they lose dualism.
Yes.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So yeah, as you can see in premise 3, if the panpsychist goes with bundle, well, first of all, there's like a why bother thing. If you say, well, the bundle story is fine at the level of electron, why isn't it fine at the level of Pat's brain and Pat's mind?
Right. Why push it deeper?
Why push it deeper? Why just say, it just so happens, a la Hume, certain things are associated regularly. We call that mm-hmm. essential. There's nothing deeper to be worried about here. Move on. Right.
Right. So that one's good. Because somebody might even say it's more parsimonious not to press it deeper. Right. Exactly. Because we've got this one sort of brute absurdity, but if you start pushing it deeper, well, now we have more brute absurdities.
Yeah,
right? Yeah,
exactly. And there's
which is contra Goff's claim of panpsychism being very parsimonious. If he follows this route, it's really just gonna make matters worse.
That's my whole point. It makes it worse. Yeah,
that's right.
And so so that's why I think what's really going on here is the panpsychist won't go bundle, because there's a sneaking suspicion that bundle theory, despite Hume's claims, runs contrary to intelligibility.
It certainly does, right?
Yeah. Okay. All right. So that's not going to work. So then if the panpsychist goes sublation, once again, why bother? If we can say ultimately the mental and the physical are resolved into some concrete reality that is both of them, well, then why do we bother pushing it down to the subatomic level? Why not just say that happens at the macro level in individual human minds?
Right. Okay. At the medium-sized dry good that is us or whatever else. Right.
Why push it down? Why bother? And once again, you're right. It just complicates the story. And moreover, it's just clearly sublation is a denial of dualism in a way. Right. So once again, that runs contrary to the basic, motivating premises behind panpsychism. Okay. So then my point is, hey, panpsychism on the grounds of one, really, it doesn't have any traction, right? We've got, okay, like it does, it's actually got to get rid of one of dualism or intelligibility or both. That won't work. So we're out of reasons to be a panpsychist. Right?
Yes. Yeah. That's good.
Okay.
That's really good.
All right.
Yeah, I
And
like
then,
that.
and then I push here to just kind of motivate some later work I'm going to do. Therefore, looks like you're going to have to give up dualism or give up intelligibility or give up both of them.
Right. Right. Yeah.
Right.
So what's first off, I love it, Jim. This is obviously the first time
Cool.
I've heard this articulation. I like it because it's also fresh. So it's both like it's making a point that has been made before, but it's making it in a new way. The point that's made before against panpsychism is like, look, at the end of the day, however you kind of analyze it, it doesn't really solve the problem. It just kind of pushes it around, maybe even spreads it, right? Maybe even worsens it.
It takes the intelligibility difficulty of dualism and it translates it into the very being of everything in the universe.
Yeah.
Right? The universe just got less intelligible, not more intelligible.
Right. And what you've done is you've just filled in the details of how that's the case, given the sort of options on the table, which are themselves extensions of the original motivations for panpsychism in the first place, which I think is just marvelous. Yeah, almost as marvelous as my lunch at Mission Barbecue today. But
I mean, I've been to Mission Barbecue with you, and that's a pretty place.
I mean, I was like, man, I hope Jim's argument's good because I'm about to eat this sausage, and is this jalapeno cheddar like is it conscious?
It's gonna be anticlimactic. Yeah. That's awesome. That's awesome.
I did eat it, by the way. It was great.
Yeah. That a boy.
Yeah. So that's great. The other thing I love about your different, this is kind of like a Jim Madden style. You have this great way of doing. I don't know if this is intentional or not, but it's definitely your style where there's all this sort of stage setting, and you're not exactly sure how it's going to come together yet, but then bam, just snaps right there. Yeah, no,
that is how I play things, man.
Yeah,
just,
yeah. No,
set up, boom.
Yeah, and if people want another example of that, just go back to your the one we did on the easy money argument against materialism too.
Yeah.
You won't see how it's gonna come together, but then boom, in the flash, it does. Yeah, so
it comes together in a flash. The Augen's blick. Yeah.
Indeed. So yeah, sweet, man. I know that we're going to continue this series, but is there anything else that you want to say about this or anything else on that Substack post? Of course, we'll direct people who want more to go and read that as well. But
yeah, no, I think that really summarizes it. Once again, it's a very detailed piece, right? So I don't know how well it translates into just recitation like this. So nothing to really add. Just I will note though, once again, there's gonna be a third piece of a different kind of critique, kind of a cultural critique of panpsychism to come up with next, right? And also note at the end what I've said, like the real big picture, what we're learning is not just, I think, panpsychism in its contemporary form has got problems. It's that I think we're seeing here, as my great motto, if we're not going to be Cartesians, then we got to stop being Cartesians, right? And we have to look at what counts for intelligibility of the world. Really, do we need a dualist sorting for there to be intelligibility of the world, et cetera, et cetera?
Yeah.
Don't think so, right? And that's kind of the work I'm setting up and the work I've done in the most recent book that's coming out too. So
yeah. So there's another thing I appreciate about your work. It's something I try to do too. Is it's kind of easy to play the skeptic. It's always harder to build something up than tear something down. So I've always just kind of felt this thing, like if I'm going to be critical of something, let me at least try and offer something positive, in response. And that's obviously where you're heading with this series.
That's where I'm heading with this.
Cool. Yeah. Very cool.
Cool, man.
Sweet.
I appreciate you indulging me on this, right? These rants that have been going on here.
It's great content, man. And I appreciate you doing it here while Dad tries to catch up on his Z's and recover for all the other great stuff we have coming on this channel here soon. Right. Gavin will be with us again next week. He's real hot on this corruptionism, survivalism thing. Jim, maybe you could even hop in on that.
Yeah, I'd like to jump in on that. Yeah.
And what up?
Also, there's no, because we've had to settle for Zoom here. There's no questions and answers, right?
Not today, but they can.
So if people want to
tomorrow. If you guys have questions about this topic, just leave them in the comments of this video, and then that way, if you leave them in the comments of this video, they'll actually stay. And then we do Freaky Friday tomorrow. We can come back and grab them from here, because for whatever reason, again, if they leave them in the live chat, they disappear after a while. So Yeah, so please actually do, guys. Please leave your questions and comments below this video, and we'll follow up a bit tomorrow, Freaky Friday. Anything else you want to
Cool.
announce before we close out here,
No, that's it.
Professor?
That's it. As always, don't be afraid to hit the links I'll put in the comments for the Gum Road courses. Always help out. And please subscribe to the Substack because I want to build some momentum on that. I think it'd be helpful to the show, even that we can start getting people talking about our stuff. So
absolutely. Yes, indeed. All right, gentle listeners, thank you so much. We'll catch you next time. Peace.